we need your opinion.
Really?
What do you think about the next 5 to 10 years on AI? Please give us a view.
Artificial insemination?
Artificial intelligence. What do you think about that?
Okay. Well, try audience, I must say. Yes, artificial intelligence is certainly going to profoundly change the world. I mean, one of the most significant ways is self-driving. So we've been putting a lot of effort into self-driving technology for cars. You don't see it quite as much in Europe because we first have to make it work in the US before we increase the complexity of trying to make it elsewhere in the world. But I think we're quite close to having the car be fully autonomous. So for example, like right now, I'm in Austin, and if I wanted to drive, say, to the airport, the car could take me to the airport with no interventions. And all it's using are digital neural nets, in other words, artificial intelligence, and cameras. So there's no LiDAR, radar, nothing. And in fact, if you think about how humans drive cars, humans are biological neural nets, and we use eyes. So it's the eyes and biological neural nets. The analog is, or digital, the analog for digital is cameras and digital neural nets. This is working remarkably well. It has been quite difficult to do this because it turns out that in order for this to work, the car has to really be quite fully intelligent. Really, as a subset, for example, it has to learn how to read everything and how to assess intention among drivers and pedestrians. So you end up creating sort of a baby artificial general intelligence to solve this. But this will obviously be extremely profound. And obviously I'm talking about automotive here. I'll get into the broader question in a minute. But the average use of a passenger vehicle is only about 10 hours per week out of 168 hours. At the point at which it is autonomous, I think you would see probably a third of the hours being used because it would be like a taxi. So maybe my guess is like 50 to 60 hours, which means that the utility of a passenger vehicle would increase by a factor of 5. This is gigantic. But we'll see. So that's automotive. Then there's what people I think have certainly experienced online, where you can ask it a question and ask for an essay or a picture, or to understand a picture, and that is progressing rapidly. What I'm seeing in terms of AI compute is I've never seen any technology advance faster than this. The artificial intelligence compute coming online appears to be increasing by a factor of 10 every 6 months. Like, now obviously that cannot continue at such a high rate for forever, or it will exceed the mass of the universe, but I've never seen anything like it. And this is why you see NVIDIA's market cap being so gigantic, because they currently have the best neural net chips. I mean, I think didn't NVIDIA's market cap exceed the GDP of Canada or something recently? Anyway, it was quite high. So,
yeah,
you know, it may go higher, who knows? The chip rush is bigger than any gold rush that has ever existed. And then there will also be robots, like humanoid robots, not just sort of industrial robots we are of course familiar with. You use industrial robots, we use industrial robots, everyone does. But they're programmed explicitly, and they don't walk around. But Tesla, for example, with the Optimus program, is making a humanoid robot that is capable of doing almost anything a human can do. I mean, I just hope the robots are nice to us, you know?
We hope so too, Elon, that the robots will be nice to us. And maybe, let's say, in this regard, because you are working on Optimus, what can we expect in terms of, let's say, support which is going to come, maybe also a little bit with regard to production, because in the Bosch Connected World we were also discussing application of AI, Gen AI, into production in order to boost productivity. Maybe a couple of thoughts on this one too.
The plus side of AI is that I think productivity will increase dramatically. So across every field, whether it be manual labor to supply chain logistics. There's already a lot of movement to use chatbots, like sophisticated chatbots for customer service, for example, where they can answer quite complex questions already. We really are on the edge of probably the biggest technology revolution that has ever existed. You know, there's supposedly a sort of a Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, we live in the most interesting of times. The most interesting. And for a while there, I was it was making me a bit depressed, frankly, because I was like, well, will they take over? Will we be useless? But then the way that I reconciled myself to this question was, would I rather be alive to see an AI apocalypse or not? And I'm like, I guess I'd like to see it. So, you know,
that's a good thought.
It's going to be boring.
That's a good thought because you mentioned it tenfold every 6 months. That's an exponential curve, right? Exponential curves are beautiful, but there's kind of a question: where does it ever end, right? Do you see any end yet, or will it go on for 3, 4, 5 years like this? Because then we talk hundredfolds, right? Thousandfolds of time.
Yeah, that's why I said obviously. Yeah, I mean, you can't grow at that rate without quickly exceeding the mass of the universe. So clearly, it's going to hit some constraints. The constraints that AI compute, and very predictable. I've actually predicted this over a year ago. So over a year ago, the shortage was chips, neural net chips. Then it was very easy to predict that the next shortage will be voltage step-down transformers. Yeah. So because exactly. You've got to feed the power to these things. Yes. So if you've got 100 to 300 kilovolts coming out of a utility, and it's got to step all the way down to 0.6 volts, that's a lot of stepping down. So now we're in step down, and this is my not that funny joke, which is that they need transformers to run transformers, because the AI is like there's this thing called a transformer in AI. It's a neural I don't know, it's a combination of sort of neural nets, and they're running out of transformers to run transformers. Then the next shortage will be electricity. So I think next year you'll see the electricity, that they just can't find enough electricity to run all the chips.
I mean, during the chip crisis, we certainly all did have many contacts. Fortunately, we were able to master it together. Of course, we all would like to avoid a second chip crisis. But with regard to your comment on power demand, we all know today vehicles have 3 to 4 kilowatt power demand for the peripherals, but this is continuously going up, and Tesla has recently launched the Cybertruck, which I believe is mostly coming with 48 volt. Do you see this as a, let's say, further disruption of automotive industry, another technology change within automotive?
Automotive industry has been living with 12 volts for a very long time, a century roughly. I think it started off as 6 volts, and then they needed a more powerful starter motor, and then they doubled it to 12 volts. Although it's actually more like 13.7 volts.
You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and the bus voltage actually varies a lot for those. Since there are probably some electrical engineers in the audience, it's like 12 volts is a very rough approximation. But it's really kind of a arbitrary low voltage. And if you look at, say, power Ethernet, it's running at 50 volts or roughly 48 volts. And we set it at 48 volts because anything really above that, you start to run into regulatory concerns. And power Ethernet is, like I said, roughly at that level. But the advantage of obviously quadrupling the voltage is that you can substantially reduce how much copper or conductor is used in the car. So you can use very small copper wires for, it's roughly a quarter, not exactly a quarter, but roughly a quarter as much copper is needed for 48 volts as for 12. So I think it's a logical move. That's really the next step for the low voltage architecture for the car. I think ultimately, long term, all cars will be 48 volts.
It's interesting that many people love electric vehicles and want to have them, but some are harmed by a missing infrastructure. That would be the same actually as the AI thing. We will have lots of chips ready, but we will not have the power to operate them. There's a race between infrastructure and technology right now. And you're also certain technology may win, which is a problem because actually infrastructure should win. We should have all the infrastructure we need. Is that correct?
Yeah. Are you talking about like sort of charging infrastructure for cars and that kind of thing? Well, the reason Tesla developed the sort of global supercharger network was specifically to address that point, the point you're making, which is people need to be comfortable that they can travel long distances and charge their car wherever they go. Unfortunately, electricity is almost everywhere, and so it's not all that rare unless you're really far out in the countryside or something. You need the charging infrastructure and the electricity to charge electric cars. In fact, the simultaneous growth of electric cars and AI, both of which need electricity, both of which need voltage transformers, actually I think is creating a tremendous demand for electrical equipment and for electrical power generation.
Maybe one more question, Elon, with regard to new vehicle designs coming to the market. Of course, you cannot share with us confidential secrets, but anyways, what are the things you believe, let's say, we will see over the next years in the market? And maybe just a small comment. In Europe, we see a shortage of affordable battery electric vehicles in the offerings because many people in Europe are only able to spend like 20,000, 25,000 euros for their vehicles. So what are the new vehicle types, vehicle designs you are thinking about at Tesla?
Well, our next generation vehicle will be a lower cost vehicle, but one also that is very focused on autonomy. Like I said, we really are getting to the point where the car can drive itself well. When you're in the US, I would recommend perhaps trying out our car and seeing how it works. It's remarkable, as the AI gets better and better, it actually feels quite human-like in the way that it drives. It does things that you wouldn't expect a computer to do. It's not like a robot dancing, It's like it feels smooth and intuitive. So our next generation vehicle, which we're quite far along on, is very much anticipating autonomy. And then of course we've got some fun things as well, like on the new Tesla Roadster, which will be able to do 0 to 100 kilometers in under 1 second.
Great. Thank you very much. That's good
what
news.
we need.
That's good news.
Yeah, so we're doing some fun stuff too, So that's the dessert. That's the cherry on the cake, Exactly. But it's fun. You're going to have the fun stuff too.
Yeah.
So to recap, Elon says AI will profoundly change the world, and one of the biggest ways is going to be self-driving. And he says Tesla is quite close to achieving full autonomy. AI will allow cars to read everything and determine its intention with no LiDAR or radar, he says. The average use of a vehicle is 10 hours per week. He sees 50 to 60 hours per week average when cars drive themselves and can go be a robo-taxi when not being used. The chip rush is bigger than any gold rush ever. It's like something he's never seen. We're getting close to robots that can do almost anything humans can do, he says. AI will increase productivity dramatically in every field around the world. AI will get so big that we need more transformers and infrastructure, And then the next step after that, we'll need more electricity than we even have. Tesla's next gen vehicle will be a low cost option with full autonomy. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the recap. Catch you in the next one.